Welcome to the latest edition of Hogtown Hangs, a podcast from the Hogtown Brass Quintet. I'm your host, Jay Austin, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Tristan Ty. Today we're talking with Carl Wells. Carl has held the position of second horn in the Auckland Philharmonia Orchestra in New Zealand since 2007. A holder of multiple passports, Carl has performed in orchestras in Canada, Mexico, the United States, and all of the major orchestras in New Zealand. Carl also has a passion for building horn community. He regularly runs horn hang events in Auckland and founded the Horn Circle, an international workshop on Zoom for all ages and stages. An alumni of the University of Northern Colorado, University of Toronto, and New England Conservatory in Boston, his principal teachers include Marion Hess, Gabriel Radford, and Daniel Katzen. I'm pleased at this time to welcome Carl Wells.
Hey everyone.
Hey Carl.
Hey guys. Thanks for having me. This is cool.
Thanks, Carl. It's really great to reconnect with you after, I think we just figured out it's been about 15 years since we've chatted. So how have you been?
Yeah, things are good. Weather's been well.
So I'd like to kick things off by talking about your position with the Auckland Philharmonia. My first question for you is, are there any big differences between orchestras in North America and orchestras abroad?
You mean in terms of
how they function, how they run, anything really? There's this perception that orchestras in Europe or other parts of the world play differently or operate differently, and I wanted to find out if there's any truth to that, really.
That's a good question. In New Zealand, it runs very similarly to North America, I'd say. Like the audition process, well, our auditions, we take recorded auditions, but in terms of like how the process runs with rounds and screens and all that, it's all the same. And the way the season runs, it's all similar. I don't know. I feel like a lot of people in North America could be like, well, I don't know. This is like my pre-COVID thought, is that there's like a big world out there, and North American players often just kind of restrict themselves to North America. And actually, like if you look on musical chairs, a lot of stuff out there, and you just kind of got to put your hand up for it, and just like in North America, and go for it, and then your opportunities are way more. So I guess it's not as scary as it might sound to look abroad, I guess, especially in like the English speaking world, like Australia and New Zealand. Pretty easy to get used to.
Right on.
I guess one of the more unique things about the Auckland Phil, and probably several others outside of Europe and North America, is that there's a history of allowing recorded auditions, like a pre-screening round, pretty much. I'm assuming you went through that process as well?
I actually flew out and took the audition, which was a little bit crazy, but the funny thing was that my parents were living in Colorado. I'm from Colorado via Massachusetts, but they moved to New Zealand, and they went through this big immigration process. And then I just decided that I would take this audition so I could go visit them.
It all worked out.
Kind of like a business trip.
Yeah.
Right on.
You want to talk about our recorded audition process?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, do you have any tips for recording auditions? I'm assuming at this point you've sat on panels and you've listened and watched tapes, or tapes, you know.
Yeah. That's a great question, and maybe like in the future with COVID, maybe more orchestras will be accepting recorded auditions. I think it might be good, actually. The way we do it is that we announce a list, an audition list, but we announce it in rounds. And so you know what the first, second, and third rounds are. And whether you take that audition in person or record it, you have to record that chunk in one shot. And the way we know you do it is because we require video. And so we don't watch the video for the first two rounds. But when we get to the third round, the panel, like the screen's there, and then we can see the person, and we know who they are. We have their resume at the third round. But all the way to get there, we've just been listening only, just like the to the live candidate. And I haven't actually done the calculations, but I would estimate we've probably hired like an equal amount of people from recordings and from live.
Oh, nice.
So it's a good system, I think. If you win the recorded audition, then you come out, and I guess either way we get to know you and there's a probation process anyway. So.
Right. Very cool.
Would you have any, based on your experience, like watching and listening to those, do you have any tips for younger people preparing recorded auditions for university or for orchestras?
Right. Great. That's a good question. Listen back to your recording is probably the number one tip. It like seems super obvious, but when you hear some recordings, you're like, surely I don't know. I guess in terms of recording quality, you have to invest in your equipment. And right now, I feel like most musicians are doing that anyways, just because that's our only outlet is recording. So we're all like upping our skills and tech. That's even more reason there's no excuse not to have a good quality recording. Mm-hmm. And then if you're recording something with piano, like make sure your pianist can play most of the notes. And it's the piano sound and tone and intonation is like somewhat acceptable and balanced with the instrument. I don't know. It's just like basic things that if you get past that level, then we can really hear your playing. But yeah, there are certain things that you just kind of have to do the groundwork, like do some testing basically before you do your final recording.
I feel like that process probably makes everyone better anyways. I guess raises the level. By the time they get there, they've already done the audition like several times, because it's not going to be perfect the first time unless you're amazing. But yeah, I feel like that's a good process for any student or young player to go through anyhow.
Recordings are so hard. I don't know, you guys, I know you guys have done recordings as well. It's like it's really hard. You make one mistake and you're like, well, do I have to go back to the beginning now, or do I keep going? And even that thought gets in the way of your performance, and you probably have to go back to the beginning. So
yeah,
it's like it does simulate a live performance in some ways anyways. Like you have to be determined and execute even when it's not perfect.
Well, and listening back is always the hardest part of recording yourself anyways. So
yeah.
There's no more honest listener than yourself.
That's where the learning happens for sure. So
yeah.
Great. Good.
So yeah, another thing people or musicians specifically are doing during this time is, trying to build community online. I've noticed, like, I'm part of it's called Positive Trumpeters Worldwide. Like there's just a whole bunch of, it's really a funny name, but it's actually a really great group. There's so many good videos on it. It's like there's no one's allowed to trash anyone. You're not allowed to make fun of anyone for what they're playing. It's just like good stuff, positive energy, great playing. And like on that note, Carl, I know you've launched the Horn Circle, which is this online international horn community. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's 3 times a week.
Yeah, currently, yeah.
And you're doing what? Practice sessions, warm ups. You have some interviews.
It's really evolving all the time. It started out, lockdown happened everywhere. It happened in Auckland, and work got canceled, and motivation got very questionable to practice. And I realized that, like, I don't love practicing for its own sake, like some people do. I needed companionship and motivation. So I just started. Well, that's how I started the Horn Circle. I was just like local community students and players. I was like 3 times a week, I'm going to be on Zoom at this time, and I'm going to walk you through a guided practice session. And I just kept getting more ideas and like integrating new things. I came up with quizzes and different ways to play along and use Zoom interactively, considering its limitations. And yeah, it started out just in New Zealand, and then my lockdown, everyone has their like little lockdown project, even if it was just surviving, but my lockdown project was like building the Horn Circle thing. And then I was like, well, people everywhere are locked down and need community, not just me. So then I started running sessions that targeted the North American time zones. And then for a while I was running 5 sessions a week, which was a lot. But and then New Zealand left lockdown, and everyone here stopped coming to the horn circle because school started and ensembles have started here. Um, and now I've been trying to add a time. I've got another time zone that kind of targets Australia and Europe at the same time. Like Sunday morning Australia, which is Sunday night Australia, which is like Sunday morning in Europe. I've been getting a lot of practice on time zones.
Yeah.
When the daylight savings changes, I'm going to be screwed up. Trust me.
I was going to say, I think you're our first interview from the future, because technically right now it's tomorrow.
That's true.
My brain can't do this. I don't know.
It's a good day. Yeah, and last week we had our first Spanish language horn circle.
Oh, cool.
Which was super cool because there have been so many people coming from Latin America, and the acting co-principal horn of the APO is Spanish. So I was like, hey, do you want to host this horn circle? And it was cool. Like we actually did a breakout room where there was like the English language half and then the Spanish language half happening at the same time in different rooms. It's just evolving, and because I guess the main impetus for the evolution is actually because we've kind of eradicated COVID in New Zealand, and so orchestras are back to work, and so I'm back to work, and I don't have time to do the horn circle, host it, because it like is during rehearsal time, and so that's why I've started reaching out to other great horn players, and like everyone said yes, and there's been such a string of like really cool and interesting guests. It's been really inspiring for me because I got sick of like hearing my own ideas on Zoom, and now I get to hear other people's ideas, which is way more exciting for me. And when I watch the replay, if I can't be there, and I've got to meet all these horn players. Like I was saying to Jay in the horn circle just now, like I am quite isolated in New Zealand, far away. Been here for 15 years almost, and I'm quite happy just playing and doing my thing, and I'm not very connected with the outside horn community. And now that this pandemic hit, all of a sudden, we've never been more isolated, but at the same time, like I've never been more connected with the horn community. So that's really cool, and I really love connecting with the horn community. And it's like honestly, it's like it's terrible what's happening in the world right now on so many different levels, but I feel like the one silver lining is that like it's like if you want it, it's like a golden age of reaching out to other musicians. Everyone's free and everyone wants to connect and needs each other. Like we're all social creatures, but especially musicians, unless you're a pianist, maybe. I'm not sure. No, but like we need each other.
Great. I took part in the Kendall Betts Horn Camp, something that all through my undergrad, all through grad school, it always was this great example of something that existed. But I mean, getting to New Hampshire is not cheap, and then paying tuition, room and board, and everything, it adds up quickly. So like without not without COVID, but in a different world, I mean, I would never have got to experience all those different teachers and all those experiences, and getting to be in a Zoom chat with 1,000 other horn players for an open Q&A and the kind of questions that would come up. I mean, things that I had never even considered, but then it turns into this really great chat. And I actually made some pretty good connections through doing that as well. And I got to hear some phenomenal horn playing. Frank Lloyd was there, and Bernard, he's disgustingly, he makes it look so easy.
Have you always wanted a Hogtown Brass t-shirt, but were never a member of the band? Well, we've got you covered, literally. We've recently launched the Hogtown Brass web store through teespring.com to help us keep the proverbial lights on and to help us continue producing great content for our fans. Currently available are t-shirts, hoodies, and tank tops, all in a variety of sizes and colors.
Carl, you and I met while studying at the University of Toronto, and it's been, I want to say, about 15 years or so since you lived in Toronto.
Yeah.
Do you remember some of your favorite places in the city, or places that you still think about?
That's a great question. You have to tell me whether my favorite pub is still there. Wait, do you even call them pubs?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Phew. My vocab is kind of like slightly skewed, and I get insecure when I talk to people from North America. Um, is the Victory Cafe still around?
It is in a sense. So it closed down. They've totally torn down Honest Ed's and that whole block. But
Oh my God.
Victory Cafe has actually, I think the business survived and they've moved somewhere close by. But yeah, the original one is no more, unfortunately.
Okay, well, I love the Victory Cafe. Upstairs, live music.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no Victory Cafe. Roy Thompson Hall, is that still there?
It is still there.
Still there.
Woof.
Still sounding medium.
If Honest Ed's goes, you never know what's going to go. So I just got to check. Yeah, Roy Thompson Hall, though, honestly, like meant so much to me because the Toronto Symphony was like the first orchestra I ever, like, first orchestra I heard really, like, live. Like I transferred to U of T from Northern Colorado, and in Northern Colorado there is an orchestra. I never went to see them. I probably should have. But coming to Toronto is like hearing the TSO all the time, and I ushered, because they are all the time, and that's the best job ever, ushering. If you want to get into, if there's anyone listening or watching who wants to like get into music more, when the TSO is back, like that's the best job, is ushering, because you get to hear all the concerts, and especially the concerts you wouldn't otherwise go see, which sometimes can be really inspiring. That was a big thing for me. Roy Thompson Hall, hearing all these great concerts, being backstage. I met Charles Dutoit one time backstage. I tried to make a joke, and it didn't really go down very well with him. I had this like massive stack of programs after the concert that I was like carrying to some dumpster or something, and like I bumped into him in the hallway and asked him if he wanted a program. And he just like scowled and like kept walking. That's like as funny as I was, I guess, but he didn't appreciate it.
Now, Carl, I'm going to follow that up by asking if you have any favorite memories or fond memories of the time you spent at the Faculty of Music at U of T.
Oh man, Harkus Henniger, so great. I don't know. It's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I can just picture it so easily. But great memories.
On the Harkus point, if this is probably a great
Yeah.
time to mention it, I went and I took a lesson with him. He was my very first teacher. And then I moved on to other teachers and went back and took a lesson with him probably 10 years later. And it's amazing when we kind of take for granted what our teachers say to us, and we hear it over and over and over again. And then at a certain point, you move to another teacher, but when you, like, I find myself more and more when I practice thinking about the things that old teachers said to me, and little things. And like every once in a while I'll have like an aha, like a light bulb moment. And it's something that Harkus said in passing, or something that Jeff said in passing, or, insert teacher's name. And it's amazing because he kept it very, like, he had distilled his teaching down to a point where everything was just crystal clear. And it was really easy to take that for granted until it wasn't there. And then going back and playing for him years later, I mean, it was just a lot of fun.
That's so cool. Yeah. I wish I had a better memory. Like I still have like notebooks full of the things I wrote down after lessons. And I'm kind of like grateful not to flip through them too much, because it like brings up much past trauma. Like, I don't know, like these notebooks of like struggle.
Yeah.
And I mean, horn is still, it's always a challenge. Yeah, I guess what you're saying is kind of like, in the end, like we're our own teacher, because teachers can say anything to us, and if we don't take it, if it doesn't mean anything to us, or we can't internalize it and like really take it in, like it'll go in, but it won't like really make a big impact until it needs to, I guess.
I think the strength of a school like U of T, and Tristan, you went to Western, you can speak to this a little bit too, is the quality of the faculty that kind of bounce around the halls. If you were lucky enough to get one of the classrooms, like the bigger practice spaces, you never know whether it's going to be history profs or theory profs or the conductor of the orchestra or Peter Rungen from the TSO or whoever is going to be wandering the halls looking for the room they're supposed to be going to give a masterclass in. And it keeps you honest. It keeps you focused. And when you're in that room, maybe it's a slight bit of fear-based motivation, but you just don't want anyone to hear you sounding your worst. You'd rather hear people, have people hear you sounding your best. And it can push that envelope for you, right? And then just like in most schools, getting to work with the coaches and getting to work with all the faculty and brass quintets and whatnot is always a joy as well. But I mean, that's what institutional learning is. I think that's the strength of it, really.
Well, also like your peers, I feel like the biggest like push came from like my peers, like yourself and like all the other people who I studied with, who are like ahead or behind in terms of what year you were in. Like that was, and seeing what they were doing, like how they were improving, and like that was always inspiring too. I guess looking back, I wish I don't know, like spent more time. Well, more time practicing would be good, but like more time like learning from my peers, like asking them questions, and because we're all like kind of going through this similar things, but I don't know, new ideas. I guess I like new ideas. That's kind of my mantra these days, especially with the horn circle. It's like for me anyways, like I had in my university study time, I had 5 teachers in my 5 years of study, like a different teacher every year, and I feel like everyone was like added something for me. And I mean, we can learn stuff from anyone. I guess that's kind of like what I like about the horn circle, is like having new ideas. And I mean, also teaching too. Like I teaching my own students, like you can say something so many ways, but someone else will have a different way, and like, oh, that works. Like, so I'm always trying to find like new ways, new tools that I can have for myself and for my students. New tools in the tool belt for like problem solving and inspiration.
That's great. So to double back to the Toronto question, because Tristan is a born and raised Torontonian, Tristan, what's your favorite spot in the city?
Oh my God, that is an impossible question. I'm like a big neighborhoods kind of guy, so I like always find it really special to be like drop yourself in the middle of Kensington Market. There's a certain vibe, there's a certain energy there. I don't necessarily go in all the shops, but like there's something about that neighborhood similar to like the Junction nowadays is like a really up and coming, really cool neighborhood, great breweries, great restaurants. I think though something that had a really big impact, let's like make this real, a big impact on my life was actually the physical building of the Royal Conservatory of Music. So it's kind of like a full circle thing for me, because I started, taking Kodai method when I was 4 or 5 years old there, like learning body percussion and singing and that kind of stuff. And then I took violin lessons in that horrendous edition that existed for decades and decades. And like I took my violin exams there. I took my first trumpet lessons there. And then like all the way up to, it was 7 years ago, I graduated from the Glenn Gould School. So it was like that little pocket, the annex between like Bay and Spadina is really, really special to me.
Me too. I love that neighborhood. Oh man. That's where I got my a ticket from the police for running a red light on my bike as well. So I'll never forget that stretch.
I thought it was gonna have something to do with the Duke of York. I don't know. Different kind of ticket.
It's also where I got hit by a car while having a soft case on my back, going to a gig with in the case was a horn that Gabe had basically paid for me to loan to see whether I wanted to buy it. And I'd promised him that I wouldn't ride my bike with it. And then I got hit by a car and had to play a concert at the old Glenn Gould School when it was the old building.
At Dufferin?
Dufferin, yeah.
Oh my God. Well, Gabe, if you're listening to this.
So you bought that horn, is what you're saying?
I did, yep. It survived quite well, actually. Soft case is really strong.
Wonderful.
So, Carl, the final question I want to ask you tonight. In North America, we're still quite a ways away from orchestras and arts organizations reopening. We touched on this a little bit in the Horn Circle today, but what advice would you offer to young professionals or freelancers, furloughed orchestral musicians, anyone who's sitting at home with their instrument in the case or in their hands, or any advice at all to sort of keep chugging along?
That's a great question. That's like the question of this time, I feel like, because we're all kind of forced to question things about ourselves that we didn't have to confront so directly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the perfect answer, but I can talk about my experience because like I may be back to work now, but it could all change, you know? I guess my advice would be to figure out why you love music and spend your time focusing on that. And then if there's not pressure, don't put pressure on yourself. I guess that would be my advice as well. And then finally, like if there's something tangential to music for you, that you can put energy into, because if you have extra time, you can't, and you're not motivated to practice 8 hours a day, which I don't know many people who are, then like for me, I started the Horn Circle, but I also like learned how to make a website. I learned everyone's like learning how to use technology and recording and editing. But there's all these side skills that are just kind of tangential to music, but can not only keep you busy and motivated with your music, but also have applications outside of music, which could be useful, like because we don't know how long this is going to be for.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess be creative and when you're playing music, play what you want to play. Like don't feel pressure to like get better or to like make the most of this time and come out the other end like a superhero. Like just enjoy playing music, find new music, order something, find stuff online when you feel like it.
Yep.
Take time off too, you know?
Yep.
Enjoy going for bike rides or writing or reading or whatever. I mean, my time gets taken up with my kids mostly, but it was great to have that time. Now that I'm back to my normal day to day, I actually miss the 8 hours where I was trying to distract my kids while my wife worked. So
Yeah.
it's amazing to have this. In a lot of ways, it's what's going on is awful and terrible, and in most ways. But the silver lining of it all is stuff like this, getting to reconnect with colleagues. We've talked to every trumpet player that's ever been in our group. We've talked to educators and we've talked to professionals like yourself, and we wouldn't have this opportunity. I mean, we wouldn't have the benefit of the time, and we wouldn't have the benefit of the or we would have the technology, but we wouldn't necessarily have the eagerness to learn to use it in the way that we have. So I mean, it's phenomenal to have that. So
Yeah.
to me, it's like look for the silver linings, and when a creative itch shows up, go all in and
Yeah.
learn how to edit audio and video, learn how to write out your thoughts, your musical thoughts on paper, like whatever, or put it in. I'm trying to learn how to write beats to like warm up to, and it's a really hard thing to do, but I haven't shown them to anyone yet, but
I'm really excited.
But they're there.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
This has been great. Carl, do you have anything you'd like to promote? Anything at all?
Well, I'd love to promote the Horn Circle. That's the big one. It's a regular time. It's every Sunday and Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And the link is on the Facebook group and on the Instagram, the Zoom ID. So it's just out there. So just pop in, reach out to me if you like. If there's any guests that you want to see on the Horn Circle, reach out on Instagram and Facebook and all that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. I guess I'm just excited about connecting with horn players from around the world. I think it's great. So much to learn and so much to be inspired from.
That's great. Thanks so much, Carl. Really.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today, Carl. I'm meeting you for the first time, but it's been a slice.
Yeah, it's great to meet you too, guys. Both reconnect with you, Jay, and meet you, Tristan. And someday we'll have a beer at the new Victory.
There we go.
I like it. I like that a lot.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. And thanks to you, everyone, our audience, for joining us for another episode of Hogtown Hangs with Jay and Tristan. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Hogtown Brass for updates on the show and other things we've got in the works. All right. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks.